Now, coming to our two penultimate sort of speakers, Jeff, who I'm glad to introduce as the CEO, founder of Mimic. And I've known Jeff from very early days when I think he just finished university, but finished university with a great idea. It was early on in the field of medical robotics, and stimulation in training people who wanted to use the robot was non-existent. And Jeff had an idea that he can create a simulator which can help surgeons develop the necessary robotic skills without having to sit or own a $1 million robot. I have witnessed Jeff struggles through the years as he built his company despite opposition. And then everybody think here that you're just going to have a good idea and everybody's going to encourage you. If anything, it was quite the opposite. Some of the bigger companies, the robotic company, was actually not all that encouraging. If anything, made his life difficult. But certainly encouragement from some of his friends, and I hope to be among those, have allowed him to continue his hard work. And I'm really delighted to say he's made a success of it. He's a successful startup company. He's having sales, and he's profitable. And he's going to tell us a little bit about the challenges he's gone through and how he has pulled through all those and here with us. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. When you're bringing a new technology on the scene, especially as an engineer, you really need the thought leaders behind you, because it's one thing for an engineer to get up there and say, hey, this is a technology I think you surgeons are really going to love. It's quite another coming from a surgeon. So Dr. Anvari was certainly a very, very early supporter, him especially through MIRA, Minimally Invasive Robotic Association, and I'm certainly grateful for his support over the years and the opportunity to speak with you today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my history starting up a simulation company, and we've had a lot of lessons on what you should do. Probably part of the things you're going to learn when I talk about what we did is what not to do. Also, we did things a little bit different. Believe it or not, we did this without raising investment. We've talked quite a bit about companies that are designed to make hundreds of millions a year, or maybe even billions. But there's certainly a place for smaller companies. And certainly I don't think you can classify surgery simulation as hundreds of millions a year, at least certainly not at this point in time. So there are certainly different levels and different approaches to building a company, and hopefully my story will be at least somewhat entertaining. So here's an agenda, and when I went through this last night, I realized that I probably had way too much material for 30 minutes, so I'm going to skip discussing the agenda. So first, just a little bit about Mimic Technologies. We are a Seattle-based company. I did start the company when I was still at the University of Washington. I founded it in March of 2001. And I was able to recruit a couple of the folks that were at the University of Washington with me, and I thought I was going to start the company just like everybody else did, which was let's put up a good business plan and let's raise some money and let's start a company. I think we've got some great technology. We think there's a bunch of applications that this technology applies to, so let's do it just the way everybody else does. Only one problem: internet bubble burst. March of 2001. Maybe not the best time to go out and raise money. Matter of fact, for the next 2.5 years, not a single new company in Seattle received any startup funds. So we really had to build the company, and when I say we, after the business people that were used to making money left pretty quickly, I mean me, trying to find a way to kind of pay your own way as you try to build the company. And the good thing about it was I was a student. So I wasn't used to making any money anyways. So it's like the perfect time to start a company because you can really stay poor and it's no different than what you knew as a student. We really did focus on robotic simulation and force feedback technology, which is adding the sense of touch to virtual reality environments. And I will say that when we started, robotic simulation wasn't necessarily our focus. We thought it could be one of our focuses, but being a little naive and having this great technology, it applied to everything. Here we have haptics and really good deformation modeling. We can apply this to gaming. We can do computer-aided design and all sorts of simulation applications. Big mistake. You need to focus as a young company, and this was something we sort of had to learn along the way. We did not raise a single dollar of investment, and to this day we have not taken investment outside of the company. We are completely self-owned. Every employee has a stake in the company after a year or so, and we were able to build ourselves up, granted very, very slowly, but with the Department of Defense funding. And it really wasn't until 2003 that we finally hooked up with what would be our killer app. And it turned out that was a partnership with Intuitive Surgical to build a simulator for the Da Vinci surgical robot. And that's really what you're seeing kind of at the bottom here. You're seeing our product, the DV Trainer, kind of a virtual mock-up of the robot as a whole, and then some video clips from our simulator. So you do need to define a need. So it's important to know your history. If you think you've got a good idea, there's a good chance that somebody else has already thought of it. So you need to make sure that your approach is unique. So just a little bit of history of simulators. People might not look at mannequins as simulators, but in fact they really are. Did anybody train with Recessa Annie's way back when to do CPR training? That's one of the very first simulators. But they certainly got more complex. We started instrumenting mannequins, and mannequins got to the point where they were incredibly lifelike, where they really freak you out. I mean, their eyes will dilate and constrict. They have full vital signs. They'll respond to meds that you inject. They're really great tools for teaching nurses and emergency medicine techs. And it's frankly a very, very strong industry right now. It could be argued that compared to pure virtual reality-based companies like Mimic, they might even be more successful at this point. However, what might be the very first virtual reality simulator was a pre-planning simulator. And this was developed by Dr. Delp and Dr. Rosen. I was actually very fortunate to work with Dr. Delp when I was at Northwestern in the mid-90s. And what this simulator is they did a lot of analysis of gait, which is essentially walking, and measuring muscle responses, and they would measure muscle links, and they tried to create a human model of tendons and muscles and muscle activations when you walk. And why would you want to do this? Because maybe if somebody does not have a proper gait, you might want to correct it. So say you have cerebral palsy. You have very tight tendons, and you tend to walk like this. Well, one of the natural responses might be, let's see if we can lengthen those Achilles tendons and relax those muscles so that you can correct gait. Now, there was some certain value in this simulator, but I won't necessarily call it a success. The reason being is, as soon as you changed the way one set of muscles worked, all the other muscles would change too. So all the data you collected from that gait analysis didn't necessarily apply. But they were, you could call them successful. They built the company up and they did sell it. But really, the first real rehearsal-based training simulator was built by Dr. Richard Satava and Jared Lanier. Dr. Satava was actually one of the speakers here last year. He's a very famous individual, and they created, admittedly, this was a pretty crude simulator, but you had a head-mounted display, you had cyber gloves on tracking what your hands did, and it was an open surgery simulator, and really, as you see, the organs aren't very complex. They didn't even flex, but you could kind of rip them out of the body, and you could learn some of the procedure going through the actions. And some will argue that doing the actions is going to reinforce learning more than just seeing it in the lecture or reading about it.